The safe room failed at the worst possible second, and the mafia boss was miles away. Weston thought his daughter and Holly would be untouchable behind steel doors and security codes. But someone sabotaged the system from the inside. The keypad flashed red, the scanner died, and the first gunshot cracked through the estate. With Mary in her arms and enemies closing in, Holly had one choice: run across the dark yard to the stables, hide the child, and face whatever came through the door alone. Let us open up this crazy story together, you and I, because this mafia drama is absolute peak fiction. Picture this menace, Weston Hargrove, 36 years old, running a massive underworld syndicate and making grown men cry from Boston to Atlantic City. But get this, the ultimate mob boss just got entirely humbled by a horse. He dropped $1.4 million on this wild black stallion, and the beast just kept snapping ribs and biting off fingers. Weston is standing there, absolutely fuming because he cannot break this animal. It goes to show that no matter how much cash or power you hold, there are some wild forces of nature you just cannot buy. Right at that exact moment of a peak embarrassment, our main girl walks straight into the yard. Enter the absolute wild card of our story, 27-year-old Holly Bennett. On paper, she is just the new nanny hired to watch the boss's 6-year-old daughter. She is rocking an oversized gray sweater and beat-up boots, basically looking broke and totally harmless. But real talk, sometimes playing weak is the smartest survival move you can make when surrounded by wolvie diet. They told her to stay out of the yard, but she stops and stares at this killer horse. The yard gets dead silent. All these tough mafia guys are holding their breath. Then, dropping the most insane flex ever, she casually sets her warm glass of milk on a fence post and ducks right into the danger zone. It teaches us a brutal truth. Looks can be incredibly deceiving. The big, bad mafia boss literally blue-screened. Weston did not even try to stop her. Maybe it was because nobody ever defies this guy. Or maybe it was because the nightmare horse completely froze the second her boot hit the dirt. Weston is watching this, and it triggers something deep inside him, throwing him right back to the night he met his late wife. By the time this random nanny raises her hand, and the killer stallion bows its head like a puppy, Weston knows exactly what is up. This chick is a walking 20-year ticking time bomb, wearing a fake identity. It is a solid reminder for all of us. The quietest people in the room are usually the ones hiding the craziest secrets, and you never want to underestimate them. A control freak like Weston cannot just let a mystery walk away. His twisted brain is screaming that he has to tear down her walls and figure out who she really is. By the way, if you are hyped to see a quiet nanny outsmart a mafia don, hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss the next drop. Anyway, back to the absolute madness in the yard. That massive, terrifying horse is standing completely frozen under Holly's hand. Its crazy, heavy breathing starts slowing down to a totally chill rhythm. She keeps her hand there for 2 beats, calming the beast without saying a single word. It proves a beautiful point about life. True strength is not about shouting or forcing your way. It is about staying calm when everything else is chaos. The horse lets out this huge, warm breath into the freezing air, totally surrendering to her. Now, most people would try to pet it or baby talk it, but not Holly. She pulls her hand back with the slick precision of a total pro. Stick with me here, because this is where it gets crazy. As she slips back through the fence, her movements are totally flawless. Finn O'Donnell, one of the top mob enforcers standing nearby, spots it instantly. That was not the clumsy move of a babysitter. That was the raw muscle memory of someone who grew up surviving in the absolute trenches. She grabs her milk glass like nothing even happened. It is a huge lesson. Your past leaves traces in everything you do, whether you want it to or not. Holly just turns and walks toward the massive mansion, her face completely blank. Talk about an absolute masterclass in keeping a poker face. She is acting like she did not just tame a demon horse while surrounded by armed hitmen. The guards are literally glitching out. Finn is wiping cold sweat off his face, realizing his tough guy status just got deleted by a nanny in a baggy sweater. Weston finally snaps out of it, and his predator mode kicks into high gear. He stalks her down the gravel path, catching up to her at the iron gates. Surprisingly, the mafia boss does not yell or grab her. Sometimes in life, keeping your cool in high-pressure moments gives you way more power than throwing a loud, messy tantrum. Weston uses his giant frame to block her path, casting this dark, intimidating shadow over her. Any normal person would flinch, but Holly just stops. Zero panic. He leans in and asks where she learned to do that. His voice is not just a boss asking a question. It is a straight-up interrogation. She looks down at the glass in her hand, remembering a legendary survival rule her late father taught her. Never show your full hand to a stranger until you know exactly what they want from you. It is a lesson we should all write down, honestly. Keep your cards close to your chest. So, she just looks up with dead eyes and tells him she learned it a long time ago, and that his daughter's milk is getting cold. Absolute savage behavior. Holly just brushes right past him and steps into the giant mansion without even glancing back. Weston is left standing there like a total statue, hands shoved in his pockets, just staring at the heavy wooden door. This guy demands absolute loyalty from everyone, and this random girl just gave him nothing. The crunch of gravel breaks the tension as his brutal brother, Tristan, steps up. Tristan is completely dead inside, ignoring the cold and the girl entirely. He just looks at Weston and asks if he should run her background again, but way deeper this time. It teaches us a pretty harsh reality. When you start acting out of character, people will immediately start digging into your past to find out exactly why. Tristan is ready to tear apart every single ranch in Montana and every hospital in Seattle just to find her paper trail. Weston lets the silence drag out. You and I know how these mafia bosses operate, right? They see anything they cannot control as a massive red flag. Weston is obsessing over how that demon horse just bowed to her. He knows she is a total boss because game recognizes game. Finally, Weston tells his brother to look into her, but to keep it entirely off the radar. He does not want her to know she is being hunted. The life lesson here is simple but dark. The most dangerous enemies are never the ones screaming in your face. They are the ones quietly plotting their next move behind your back. A freezing wind sweeps through the yard, carrying the smell of dirt and tension. For a massive control freak like Weston, an unpredictable girl is the scariest thing on earth. She is not a target. She is not an ally. She is a complete wild card. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Holly is on a mission. She heads straight into the east wing and pushes open the door to little Mary's room. The tiny 6-year-old is sitting on her bed, gripping this beat-up, old gray teddy bear like her life depends on it. It is her only safe space in a house full of monsters. It is a heartbreaking reminder that kids often carry the heaviest emotional weight, and they will cling to the smallest things just to feel a tiny bit of security in a chaotic world. The poor kid is so hyper-vigilant that she does not even blink when the door opens. Mary is just staring out the window at the lake, totally zoned out from reality. Holly gently sets the milk down and sits on the edge of the bed, making sure not to get too close. This is pure genius right here. Holly knows that when somebody is deeply hurting, invading their personal space is the worst thing you can do. You have to give them room to breathe. She keeps her voice super calm and tells Mary she brought a book to read. She is not forcing anything, just offering a tiny olive branch. It perfectly shows how real healing begins, not with big, loud gestures, but with quiet, steady patience that slowly builds up trust over time. Holly pulls out this kid's book about a little brown horse lost in a massive field. Mary takes a solid minute to process this, slowly turning her sad, pale eyes toward the cover. You can literally see the heartbreak of losing her mom in that stare. Holly starts reading, but she keeps her voice totally flat and chill. No fake, overly happy baby talk. Kids who have been through the absolute ringer can spot fake energy from a mile away. Her totally relaxed vibe works magic, and little Mary slowly scoots closer until her shoulder is touching Holly's arm. The story is basically Mary's whole life right now, a scared little animal lost without its family. It proves that sometimes the best way to help someone is just meeting them exactly where they are. Then, Mary whispers the most heartbreaking question ever. She asks if the horse has a mommy. The words are super quiet, but it is a massive breakthrough. Holly totally freezes. In that 1 second, she is no longer playing the tough undercover nanny. She is flashed right back to her own painful childhood in Montana, remembering what it feels like to lose your family. But she pulls it together. She looks right at the kid and promises that the horse's mother is waiting for it to come home. Mary just goes completely silent, looking down and rubbing the frayed ear of her teddy bear. Listen, the biggest lesson here is that shared pain creates the strongest bonds. Two broken people can absolutely become the shield that protects each other. All right, picture this. Holly snaps the book shut and slides it next to a glass of untouched milk. She is completely reading the room here, knowing you cannot just force a massive emotional breakthrough on a traumatized kid. You and I both know the hardest lesson we ever learn is that real healing means letting go of the steering wheel, not gripping it tighter. She just gently pulls a heavy blanket over the girl's shoulders and leans back. Outside, a hawk circles the frozen lake like an absolute predator, but inside, Holly starts singing. Not some basic nursery rhyme, but this haunting Montana folk song about wild rivers. Surrounded by these cold, calculating mafia bosses, she is quietly building a bulletproof emotional fortress for this broken kid. Look at her go. Holly drops the pitch of her voice into this super low, steady hum. She is not just giving out free hugs here. She is basically hacking the kid's nervous system to create a physical anchor. By the third verse, the magic actually works. The kid's breathing slows down, and she finally stops strangling that plush bear like a hostage. Holly finishes the song and freezes, going completely motionless. Little Mary has been dealing with absolute nightmare fuel and night terrors for 3 straight weeks, and Holly is sitting there being the human shield she desperately needs to rest. The lesson here is honestly beautiful. True safety is not about loud promises or flashy gestures. It is just showing up and being a quiet, unbroken presence when the lights go out. Meanwhile, the boss himself, Weston Hargrove, is lurking in the hallway like a ghost. He was about to bail, but hearing that song completely froze him. We are looking at a father so buried in trauma, he forgot what his own kid looks like asleep. Check his body language. One hand is hidden, while the other clenches like he is ready to throw a punch. His brain is short-circuiting. Seeing that wild horse submit earlier, combined with his daughter finally breathing easy, shatters his tough guy logic. But since he completely lacks the emotional toolkit to handle this, he backs off and refuses to knock. It brings up a harsh truth we all have to face. The fighter Al, you can never truly fix your life if you choose to hide in the shadows instead of bravely stepping through the open door. Weston sneaks away with silent footsteps, like a guy terrified of breaking his fragile mental state. Cut to Holly, slipping into her room in the north wing. But guys, check out this massive detail. Her window has a direct line of sight, straight to the stables. She completely missed this huge red flag when moving in, which is classic avoidance behavior. She shuts her door but leaves the lights off, plunging herself into darkness. She wraps a thick blanket around her shoulders to calm her absolutely fried nervous system and just stares out into the freezing night. It is wild how true this life lesson really is. We constantly complain about feeling trapped by our past, but half the time, we are the very ones who built the cage and locked the heavy door from the inside. Outside, the stable lights glow, and Holly is absolutely locked onto that black horse 200 meters away. She slowly brings her hand to her face, and look at this. She scrubbed her hands 3 times today until her skin was raw, desperately trying to wash away the physical memory of touching that animal. But you cannot erase mental scars with soap. Her brain still smells the phantom scent of horse sweat, damp straw, and leather. It is the odor of a nightmare she swore to block out forever. That massive mental wall she spent 8 years building just completely crumbles to dust in one agonizing second. It teaches us all a brutal truth. The past is never actually dead and buried. It just sits quietly in the shadows, waiting for the perfect trigger to jump out and pull you right back. Boom! We are thrown into a flashback. 7-year-old Holly reaches out to a mother horse in a Montana stable. Her dad, Jesse, lifts her up and guides her hand to the exact right spot. This is her origin story, guys. He asks if she can hear the animal, his voice totally gruff. He explains that horses talk through breathing, tiny twitches, and shivering skin. He is literally hardwiring her brain for radical empathy, teaching her to absorb the world through her entire nervous system. And she soaked it up perfectly. But today, you and I can see what a dangerous superpower this really is. It brings up a very heavy life lesson. When you teach a kid to physically the silent suffering of the world, they inevitably end up carrying all that dark trauma as if it actually belongs to them. For 12 years, Holly was an absolute machine at reading horses. By 16, she tamed aggressive animals that tough guys ran from. The auction circuits called her a horse whisperer, but she hated that title. She was just reading the physical data her dad trained her to see. Then came an October afternoon when she was 19. They were working on a massive chestnut stallion. Her dad spent 3 months training this beast, and they both made a fatal mistake. They actually thought the dangerous part was over. Holly was chilling by the door with a bucket, watching her dad confidently step inside the pen. This highlights a super grim reality about life. The exact second you get arrogant and assume you have completely tamed the unpredictable, that is the very moment everything goes horribly wrong. Everything in that barn looked completely normal. Sunlight poured through the wood, giving off this super cozy, safe vibe. The horse was just standing there, ears locked onto her dad, playing the part of a perfectly calm animal. Holly even remembers smiling in that exact moment. Then, absolute chaos erupted. Out of nowhere, the horse violently reared up. 0 warning signs, not a single flinch or muscle twitch that either of these top-tier experts could catch. This split second totally shattered Holly's entire worldview, that naive idea that if you just pay enough attention, you can predict exactly what will happen. It took her 20 seconds to drop that bucket and run in to help. But let me tell you a dark truth about survival. When you are dealing with sudden violent tragedy, 20 seconds is an absolute eternity. 32 years of her dad's legendary experience ended in just 20 seconds. Bleeding out on the concrete floor, he literally built himself. The vet had absolutely no explanation. 2 veteran animal experts could not figure out what triggered the attack either. They all chalked it up to a random psychotic break. But Holly swallowed a much darker, totally toxic story. Her whole identity was built on having flawless empathy and reading invisible signs. So she felt her true power completely failed her in the biggest moment of her life. She is convinced the horse gave a warning, and she was just too blind to see it. This is exactly how survivor's guilt is born, guys. It shows how we would always rather torture ourselves for not predicting the future than accept that life is just terrifyingly random and out of our control. After the funeral, Holly hits the panic button and sells the ranch in just 6 weeks. But wait, it gets worse. Her mom was secretly hiding a huge lung tumor, playing the tough guy so she would not stress her husband. What follows is 6 brutal years of hospital rooms and 0 money. Holly becomes the sole caregiver, sleeping in tiny hospital chairs to comfort her dying mom. When her mom passed away 2 years ago, she left behind $180,000 in medical debt. Standing right at the casket, Holly made a cold promise to grind away every single penny. It is a classic coping mechanism, guys. We often turn our massive grief into a simple math problem, simply because paying off a heavy financial debt is way easier to control than trying to piece together a totally broken heart. Holly's second big promise was absolute avoidance. She swore never to touch another horse again. She kept that massive psychological wall up for 8 long years, but that streak officially died today. Now, sitting in the dark, she stares at her fingers, hyper-aware they still smell like the animal. The stable lights click off outside, and she is totally frozen. No crying, no sleeping, just a blank stare at the cold winter stars. Boom, fast forward 3 days. The temperature drops hard, and the autumn leaves crisp up into dead brass. Inside the massive West Wing, our mafia boss Weston sits in his dark walnut study. This room is the ultimate reflection of his own broken mind. It is ridiculously expensive, completely rigid, built specifically to keep everyone else out, and absolutely empty of any real human warmth. His windows overlook a dead garden, perfectly matching how hollow the boss feels inside. By 9 a.m., he is crushing corporate calls, but his brain is glitching out. Cold coffee sits next to reports he skimmed but did not process. Suddenly, his right-hand man, Tristan, knocks and walks in, completely ignoring the laptops. Today, Tristan carries a physical gray folder. In this elite mafia world, using actual paper means the secret is way too explosive for a digital server. Tristan drops the file on the desk, standing tall like a soldier. With a dead flat voice, he confirms he pulled all the dirt on Holly without triggering alarms, telling Weston to read it backwards. It brings up a huge life lesson. Digging up someone else's hidden trauma might make you feel safe and in control, but ultimately it is absolute poison to your own soul. Listen up! Guys, Tristan drops the intel, splitting the hard facts from the profiling. Weston pulls a total boss move, staying dead silent to establish dominance. As he cracks open the 14-page dossier, he is hunting for who she was before life completely wrecked her. Page 1 is pure basics. Holly Margaret Bennett, born in Montana, March 1998. Dad was a horse guy, mom a teacher. Next up, basic high school grades. Weston is tearing through this thing, hunting for a villain origin story or a psychological fracture. But the data refuses to budge. It just screams totally normal. And here is a simple lesson for you. Sometimes the most intense people do not start out broken. They start out completely ordinary until the world forces them to change. You and I have to look at this closely, because this is where the plot twist hits. She gets into an animal science program in 2016. But by 2018, her whole life absolutely crashes. Page 6 drops the bomb. Her dad dies from massive head trauma in a freak accident. Weston actually pauses. Even this cold boss knows how heavy sudden grief feels. Then the file shows her mom fighting cancer for 6 agonizing years, racking up $180,000 in medical debt before passing away in 2024. That forced Holly into dead-end jobs just to survive. The lesson here? Unfair tragedies can completely derail your path overnight. This file is definitely not a standard resume. It is a brutal, clinical autopsy of a totally shattered life. In the underworld, bosses always look for a baseline, but Holly has 0 criminal record, no sketchy debts except medical bills, and basically no family. Weston realizes she is just a woman surviving absolute hell without turning evil. That explains why she acts so quiet and wears beat-up boots. But it does not explain her insane skills with that massive horse. So he flips to page 12, the off-the-record dirt his brother dug up illegally. He starts reading, and by the 4th sentence, Weston literally freezes. His entire nervous system just short-circuits. And here is a massive life lesson for you. Never underestimate a totally quiet person in the room. Absolute stillness is usually the first sign that your entire reality just got ripped to shreds. Guys, we need to unpack this insane plot twist right now. Turns out Holly was an absolute legend in the horse world from 2013 to 2018. They literally called her the Whisperer. By 15, a major Kentucky racing syndicate scouted her. By 17, she casually turned down a massive $600,000 contract from a huge Texas ranch. She was famous. Then came the ultimate blow, her dad passing away. The trauma hit her so hard, she just completely deleted herself from the map for 8 straight years. The big takeaway here? Deep grief can make you hide your absolute greatest gifts from the world. Weston reads the file twice without even blinking, completely stunned, then just shuts the heavy folder tight. Check out this absolute power move. Weston rests his hand shy folder like a guy about to kick open a door into a war zone. Tristan stands there frozen, watching his ice-cold boss actually show a reaction. Weston finally speaks, his voice completely dead and scary flat. He orders zero physical contact with the girl, absolutely no more spying, and total lockdown on this crazy intel. Tristan gives a single nod, then Weston whips out his phone and calls his head trainer, Finn. It is 10 a.m., and Finn sounds half asleep, but Weston skips all the small talk. He just drops the brutal hammer. Finn, you are totally useless to me now. Pack your bags and get out by noon. The lesson here is harsh but true. In the Mafia world, the exact second you lose your value, you are permanently out the door. There is a super long, heavy silence on the phone. Finn realizes instantly that his life is on the line, and asking questions right now would be a literal death wish. Instead of fighting back, he just completely submits, wishing the boss good luck with that crazy beast of a horse. Boom. Just like that, the top muscle is fired. Weston hangs up and locks the file in his desk, locking down his territory like a true mob boss. But Tristan is just standing there glued to the floor. For the very first time, he sees a completely new, terrifying vibe coming from his brother. It is a huge shift in his dark psychology. And honestly, the life lesson to remember is this: the most dangerous obsessions do not start with loud declarations. They start in complete, terrifying silence. Fast forward to midnight, and the weather goes absolutely insane. The wind is tearing everything up, and the rain is hitting like horizontal bullets. At 12:15 a.m., a massive lightning bolt strikes a tree outside, shaking the entire mansion. But get this, it is not the storm that wakes Holly up. No, it is a sound she has been trained to recognize since she was 7 years old. The heavy, terrifying sound of a massive horse smashing its head against wood. She snaps awake instantly, going from deep sleep to full tactical mode. Outside her room, the entire security staff is running around in absolute panic. A good life lesson. When a real crisis hits, it is not the loudest noise that grabs your attention. It is the exact specific problem that you were perfectly built to solve. Stick with me here. Holly does not even think, her body just locks into pure survival mode. She throws on jeans and a heavy sweater. No mirror checks, just pure action. She sprints down the hall, stopping for 1 second to ensure the boss's kid is still fast asleep, despite the crazy thunder. Then she hits the ground floor and raps twice on the old caretaker's door. Otis answers, looking totally confused. Holly does not waste time explaining the drama. She just stares at him and gives a flat command. The kid is sleeping. Guard this hallway. He takes one look at her intense face and nods. Here is a solid life lesson. In moments of massive chaos, true leaders never stand around asking for permission. They just step up, give clear directions, and take immediate, absolute control. Otis has been working for this ruthless family for 50 years, so he knows a hardcore command when he hears one. He grabs his coat without a single word and locks down the area. Meanwhile, Holly bursts out the back door into the absolute hurricane, throwing on a rain jacket. The quarantine pen is only 50 steps away on the gravel, but when your adrenaline is pumping that hard, it feels like a whole mile. The crazy storm is hammering her the entire way. When she finally makes it to the animal pen, the scene is a total joke. 6 giant mob enforcers are just standing around, frozen in fear, completely refusing to go inside. The lesson: big guys look tough until real danger shows up. True courage is moving straight toward the exact thing that makes absolutely everyone else freeze. Inside the pen, this massive beast is having an absolute meltdown. It is backed into the deepest corner, legs shaking like crazy, overwhelmed by the storm. Foam is flying everywhere, and the back wall is literally about to snap. With every lightning flash, this giant horse throws its head against the wood like a weapon. It is pure self-destruction. Holly does not even hesitate. She physically shoves a paralyzed mafia guard out of her way to reach the gate. One of the tough guys actually screams at her, warning she will be killed the second she steps inside. But she completely blanks him out and rips open the door anyway. Here is a powerful life lesson. When someone is hurting themselves out of pure panic, logic completely fails, and only brave empathy can actually break the destructive cycle. You and I are going to watch this together, because this is an absolute masterclass in calming down pure chaos. She does not just run right at the angry beast. Instead, she slowly takes off her rain jacket, folding it up with insane precision. Then, she just drops straight down into the dirt, making herself look tiny against the wall, pulling her knees in. The giant horse totally locks its eyes onto her. It is breathing super heavy, but incredibly, the head bashing actually stops. She refuses to look it in the eye, just staring calmly at her own empty hands. She is basically telling it, I am not a threat. The amazing life lesson here: sometimes the best way to handle an explosive situation is to just step back and become the calm ground, rather than fighting the raging storm. Slowly but surely, the massive animal starts to chill out. By minute 7, it lets out this huge breath, and its ears stop pinning back in attack mode. Holly is still staring at the dirt. Then, at minute 10, she starts to talk. She brings up deeply buried childhood memories, talking about the sound of rain on a metal roof and losing a beloved horse named Maple. But here is the wild part: her voice has zero emotion. It is completely flat, like she is reading a boring manual. She keeps this up, and by the 16th minute, the massive gap between them suddenly shrinks. The beast is getting closer. What is the powerful lesson in this? If you want to calm a totally terrified soul, you must project peace. Sharing painful truths without projecting panic is the ultimate way to build real trust. Even with this giant beast in her face, Holly does not flinch. She leans her head back against the wood, exposing her own neck, and closes her eyes to prove she is absolutely not a hunter. And boom, at the 20-minute mark, the creature fully surrenders. She feels its hot breath right before this massive 600-kilogram monster drops its heavy head onto her tiny shoulder. It anchors its absolute vulnerability to her fragile body, and they start breathing at the exact same time. She does not even try to pet it. She just calmly rests her hand on its nose. Outside the pen, all those hardcore mob guys are standing there completely speechless. The final lesson here? True power is definitely not about forcing someone into submission. It is about creating enough safety to invite a willing surrender. You and I gotta look at this closely, guys, because this is wild. The Big Don Weston, an absolute megalomaniac, is experiencing massive brain lag. He's standing in the pouring rain, drenched, totally frozen. Bro ran out of his massive mansion, thinking there was an emergency, but now he's just staring. He sees his quiet, traumatized Nanny, who hasn't shown emotion in 8 years, suddenly getting super cozy with a literal killer horse. This lethal beast is just letting her hug it. Seeing this absolute flex completely breaks Weston's cold, mafia boss brain. And honestly, guys, here's a quick life lesson for you. Sometimes the most guarded, hardened people are the ones who fall the hardest when they finally see real, raw vulnerability. Moving on to the next morning. It's literally 5:30 a.m. The sky outside the Harov estate looks like a bruised plum, and our girl Holly is already up and grinding. Sleep? Yeah, right. Her nervous system is stuck in pure survival mode after that crazy horse encounter. She creeps into this massive, cold marble kitchen just to get some routine going. She needs that physical ritual of brewing coffee before the house wakes up and Mary starts needing her. The chef isn't even here yet. The place is completely hers. Look, here's a real-life lesson. When your mind is a chaotic mess, sometimes complete silence is the only safe space you can handle. She's just trying to find 1 second of peace before the daily mobhouse drama kicks in again. So, she's setting up her coffee gear with serious precision, right? Suddenly, the back door creaks open and heavy leather shoes step in. Now, any normal person would jump out of their skin, but Holly? She doesn't even flinch. Her threat radar is already maxed out. Weston steps out of the shadows like a literal movie villain, deliberately skipping the lights. He's rocking a blue shirt, hair still wet. But pay attention to his spacing, guys. He stops exactly 3 steps away, close enough to flex his boss energy, but far enough so she doesn't go into full flight response. Bro is just staring intensely at a humming kettle. Life lesson time. True power isn't about getting up in someone's face. It's knowing exactly where to stand to own the room. Let's break down this insane mind game, guys, because the tension is crazy. Weston tries an alpha move. You didn't sleep, he says, calling out her weakness. But Holly just mirrors him, not even looking up. Neither did you. Boom. Then the Don makes his real play. He wants her to officially tame this psycho horse. He doesn't order her around. Nah, he offers a sketchy private contract, bypassing her agency, acting like it's a favor. It's a total trap, guys. He's secretly trying to lock her inside his own personal mafia bubble and slap a bow on it. The life lesson here is crucial. Whenever someone tries to isolate you under the disguise of a great opportunity, you better run the other way. He's masking his obsession with pure dominance. Bro literally throws the bag at her, offering 5 times her normal pay. For a mob boss, cash is just a cheat code to buy loyalty. But watch Holly's epic reaction. The kettle boils, and she casually pours her coffee like he just mentioned the weather. No gasping, no bowing down. She leans against the counter, crosses her arms, and drops a massive barricade. She looks this terrifying dude dead in the eyes, and she doesn't look impressed at all. She's got the cold stare of a veteran who already calculated his whole game plan. I will work with the horse, she says, her voice dead flat. Life lesson, guys. Money only gives people power over you if you let it. She just looked at a mountain of cash and basically said, keep your loose change. Stick with me, because this is where she absolutely flips the script on him. She flat out refuses the money. She tells him she'll keep her normal nanny pay and only train the horse on her own time. Weston is totally blue screening right now. The Don is looking at her like his brain just crashed. Why? He asks, and Holly hits him with the ultimate finisher. I will do it for the horse, not for you. She wasn't even trying to roast him, she was just stating a fact. By rejecting the cash, she totally deletes his only cheat code for control. We call this breaking the matrix, bro. In all his years of running an empire, nobody has ever told this guy no, without getting wiped off the map. Life lesson. Your strongest shield is needing absolutely nothing from toxic people. The boss is completely dismantled. Nobody has ever bodied his authority this smoothly. He can't even get mad, because there's nothing to fight. She just built a titanium wall he cannot buy his way through. Weston stands there for an awkward eternity before he just nods. Fine. But guys, an ego that big can't handle losing. Halfway out the door, he stops and tries one last manipulative jab. You still haven't told me the truth, he mutters, trying to make her feel guilty. Does she care? Nope. Holly sips her coffee and drops the coldest line of the century. You still haven't asked the right question. Absolute mic drop. Life lesson for you all. You don't owe anyone an explanation, especially when they're playing mind games instead of being real with you. He slinks out like a defeated boss, closing the door in dead silence. The second he's gone, Holly finally exhales. Turns out she was holding her breath that entire time. Setting boundaries with an underworld kingpin takes a massive toll on your nerves, man. We all put on a brave face, but underneath, the panic is real. Over the next few days, this super tense household falls into a weird new rhythm. Holly is a woman of her word. Her mornings are 100% dedicated to teaching little Mary. But the moment the afternoon hits, she heads straight for the dirt and the danger of the stables. Life lesson here. True professionals compartmentalize. You can be terrified on the inside, but you still show up and get your job done when the clock strikes. Now, let's look at her training method, because it's honestly genius. She totally ignores the standard mob-style aggression. No whips, no chains. She just grabs some apples, drags a chair into the dirt, and literally just sits there. She kicks out the toxic trainers and just vibes with this traumatized beast. She's resetting its whole brain. Week 2, the monster horse lets her brush it. Week 3, it takes a saddle, but she refuses to ride it yet, clearly dealing with her own internal baggage. Then, by week 4, she completely switches up the game plan and brings in a sweet, golden brown pony named Biscuit. Guys, life lesson time. You can't force trust with violence and yelling. Real loyalty is built quietly, sitting in the mud, showing up day after day. This part hits right in the feels, guys. Little Mary is gripping the fence, absolutely terrified. Despite living on an estate worth millions, this poor kid has never been allowed near a horse. Holly, who secretly got the Don's permission beforehand, gently sets the nervous girl onto Biscuit's saddle. This pony is a total pro, giving off the chillest, safest vibes ever. For the first minute, Mary is stiff as a board, totally frozen in fear. But then, the pony wiggles its head, and suddenly, Mary bursts out laughing. It's the purest, happiest sound you've ever heard. She finally drops that massive shield she's been carrying. Life lesson. Everyone, sometimes the best way to conquer a deep fear is to just get in the saddle and realize the monster isn't real. That laugh echoes across the whole yard. And guess what? It happens right next to the spot where Mary's mom passed away. Heavy stuff, right? Meanwhile, Weston is hiding behind a window, up above like a shadow. He hears that laugh and totally freezes. This massive, untouchable mafia boss is paralyzed by his own kid's happiness. 3 years of his cold, perfectly constructed emotional walls just crumble into dust right there. He's feeling things he doesn't even have words for, watching from the shadows until Holly helps Mary down. 2 days later, he makes his move and officially summons the quiet nanny to dinner. Life lesson right here, guys. The highest fortress in the super to protect your heart. But pure joy will always find a crack in the wall. You and I both know a control freak, like Weston, doesn't just casually ask people to hang out. He summons her for 8 p.m. Holly doesn't even own a fancy outfit. She rocks up in a faded black dress from her own mom's funeral. Talk about wearing your trauma. She rolls downstairs, completely unfazed. Weston is waiting at the head of the table. But check out this massive plot twist, bro. When she walks in, the Don actually stands up. The untouchable boss is showing genuine respect. They eat in this super rigid but weirdly calm silence, only talking about Mary's new pony to play it safe. Life lesson to wrap this up. Real respect isn't demanded through fear. It's earned by sticking to your boundaries and refusing to play the victim in someone else's game. Let me tell you, you and I have seen some crazy standoffs, but this is next level. These two are dodging red flags like absolute pros. She is not asking about his sketchy empire, and he is totally ignoring whatever messy baggage she dragged from Montana. After dinner, he brings her into his cramped, dark wood reading room with a roaring fire. Total power move, trying to force her to crack. He pours himself a huge glass of whiskey to take the edge off, but our girl turns it down flat. She sits there with a crystal clear head. For a solid minute, it is just the fire crackling in this dead silence. Finally, he stares into the flames and drops the bomb. My wife. Honestly, guys, the lesson here is simple. If you want to keep the upper hand in any room, never let anyone pressure you into blurring your own vision. Bro, his voice dead steady, like he has been rehearsing this villain monologue in his head for years. Get this. His wife got wiped out in a massive car explosion meant for him, all because he swapped schedules at the last second. He sat on this dark secret for 3 whole years. Holly does not give him that fake pity nonsense, because real recognize real. Instead, she drops her own trauma. She was 19, missed a tiny warning sign from a spooked horse, and absolute tragedy struck. She missed a 3-second window. Weston just puts down his drink and hits her weak spot. You had 3 seconds to save him. Savage. The life lesson here is pretty brutal. We all carry heavy baggage, but the second you open up about your past mistakes, people will use them to test exactly what you are made of. Stick with me here, because we are about to unpack this together. Weston fires back, saying he had 6 whole hours to tell his wife to take another car. 6 hours! After that, total radio silence. Just the wind slapping a creepy tree branch against the window. They are sitting miles apart emotionally, but in that dark little room, some insane, unspoken bond just locked into place. Neither of them wants to admit it, obviously. When she finally dips out to go to sleep, his massive boss ego will not let him ask her to stay, but catch this crazy detail. For the first time in years, the big bad dad Don leaves his whiskey completely untouched. The takeaway is honestly beautiful. Even if you build up a massive fortress around your heart, a single moment of genuine connection can completely shatter your daily habits. Now enter the villain of the week, Audrey Prescott. This girl rolls up out of nowhere on a Tuesday in a slick white Mercedes she bought with dirty corporate money. No heads up, just pulling up like she owns the place. She was his lawyer for 5 years and his side piece for 2. So she thinks she has permanent VIP access. She is rocking the ultimate boss armor. Tan coat, killer red heels, perfect blonde hair. She struts past the guards waving legal folders about a Delaware buyout. But come on, that is a total fake out. She is just marking her territory because she feels threatened. It is wild to watch. Here is the life lesson for today. People will always use fancy excuses and professional cover stories to hide their real motives, especially when they are acting out of pure, unfiltered jealousy. Weston lets her into his office right at 3. For almost an hour, they are just blasting through paperwork like cold corporate machines. Audrey signs her life away, shoves the papers back, and leans in. She has this toxic, manipulative speech totally memorized from her drive over. She is ready to drop the hammer. But right before she opens her mouth, absolute disaster strikes for her. Outside the window, casually strolling across the yard, is Holly. And just like that, Audrey loses her mind. Her whole calculated vibe shatters in a single millisecond. It is wild but also super true to life. You can spend hours planning out exactly what you are going to say to look cool, but life will always throw a totally random curveball that wrecks your perfectly laid plans. Flexibility is everything, guys. Holly is just existing, wearing a basic blue flannel, hair up, walking normal. But the second her shadow hits the glass, the big bad boss is completely freezes. It is a split second before he goes back to his papers. But Audrey has the eyes of a hawk. She catches that tiny look. Why? Because 3 years ago, before his wife died, Weston used to look at Audrey that exact same way. You do not just miss a massive red flag like that. Audrey takes huge emotional damage, but keeps her fake smile glued on and demands some tea. Weston sends her downstairs. 10 minutes later, Holly happens to walk right past her. The tension is insane, and here is your life lesson. Real hatred does not come crashing through the door screaming. It sits quietly on the couch, sipping tea, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Audrey goes straight for the throat, using a super fake sweet voice. She hits her with "You are the new nanny, right?" Holly just nods. Then Audrey unleashes a decade of pure corporate evil. She drops the sickest insult, saying she knows exactly which girls Weston actually sucks and which ones he throws in the trash. Then she literally looks Holly up and down, checking out her cheap boots, and says Holly is definitely the trash kind. She even adds, "Do not take it the wrong way." The audacity of this woman is off the charts. It is total mean girl psychological warfare to make Holly feel completely worthless. The life lesson here is one we all need. The worst bullies do not punch you in the face. They smile right at you and wrap their most toxic garbage in polite little packages. You and I would probably start throwing hands, but Holly has ice in her veins. She does not blink, does not shake, does not even spill a drop of her tea. She absorbs this insane disrespect and replies with the coldest comeback ever. She thanks Audrey for worrying, says the kid needs her milk, and tells her to drive safe. Boom! Drops the mic and just walks away. Audrey is left standing there looking like an absolute clown. Her evil smirk vanishes because her whole plan to make Holly cry completely backfired. Her massive ego is totally crushed. She gets so embarrassed she fakes a phone call and literally runs out of the house. Guys, write this lesson down right now. The absolute best way to destroy a hater is to give them zero reaction. When you keep your cool, you strip away all of their power. But Audrey is not done being a menace. Instead of driving home, she sneaks down to the basement where the main camera feeds are. Because she has been the boss's lawyer for 5 years, the guards think she belongs there. She becomes basically invisible to them. She locks herself in the control room for 20 whole minutes and gets to work. This crazy lady actually hacks the mainframe and codes a secret back door into the family panic room. a glitch so tiny nobody will ever see it coming. She is literally setting up an attack from inside the house. It is completely unhinged, and honestly, it brings up a super scary life lesson. The worst backstabbers are never random strangers trying to break down your walls. They are usually the fake friends you gave a spare set of house keys to years ago. We really need to look at this villain arc together. Audrey finally creeps out of the mansion in the pitch black. She drives miles away to some creepy gas station, pulls out an untraceable burner phone, and dials a hitman. 3 rings later, she drops the coldest line. "Mr. Whitfield, it is time we talked." Fast forward exactly 9 days, and the nightmare starts for Holly. She is casually grabbing extra mail and spots a weird, blank white envelope shoved between her bills. No stamp, no return address, just her name written in this creepy, fake handwriting to hide who sent it. This is peak thriller stuff right here. The lesson is chilling but true. The app across the street. Moves, the absolute worst moves against you are never made in the heat of the moment. They are planned in the dark and delivered entirely in silence. Holly rips open that envelope in the hallway, and there is just one piece of paper inside. It says, "If you are still around next week, someone dies, and it might just be the kid." Absolute chills, bro. At first, her brain cannot process it. Her legs go totally numb, but she locks herself in her room before the panic hits. She sits on her bed staring at those words, and all she can think about is little Mary. Her brain flashes memories of the kid laughing, and now she knows that innocent baby has a target on her back. The stakes just went through the roof. It highlights a tough life lesson. If an enemy truly wants to break your spirit and force you to surrender, they will never attack you directly. They will always go straight for the weak point, targeting the innocent people you love the most. Let us kick this off, you and I, because the psychological warfare here is completely off the charts. Holly goes into absolute overdrive. Her brain completely deletes Weston and his muscle from the equation. She is laser-focused on little Mary, picturing the kid downstairs, just coloring while a literal death threat hangs over them. Holly knows if she tips off the Don, he will lock the whole estate down and trap them. In the crossfire, she lost her dad years ago because she hesitated for 3 seconds, and she is not making that mistake twice. The crazy thing about human nature is that when deep trauma hits, our first instinct is to run away and at least late, genuinely believing that disappearing is the only way to keep the people we love breathing. Survival mode is fully activated, and Holly refuses to let another tragedy happen on her watch. She yanks out the worn travel bag she brought from Seattle 8 months ago and speed runs her packing. 2 sweaters, 3 shirts, 1 dress, and some backup boots. Under 15 minutes flat. But right as she folds that last shirt, the emotional dam completely shatters. Tears hit the fabric before her brain even registers the heartbreak. She cries in absolute silence, a tragic habit picked up from 6 years of sitting in quiet hospital rooms with her mom. She just collapses next to her bag, totally defeated. Then, the bedroom door slowly creaks open. It really shows you that real profound grief is rarely loud. It is just a heavy, quiet burden we try to pack away in the dark. You and I need to really look at how intense this next moment is. There is no knock. Just 6-year-old Mary standing there, clutching a little paper crane. This kid has supersonic hearing when it comes to sadness, having absorbed the sound of suppressed crying when her own mother was sick. Holly is completely caught off guard, but Mary does not freak out. Instead, the kid calmly walks inside and carefully shuts the door to secure the room. And she takes a few measured steps and sits on the floor at a very specific distance. It is that exact safe zone a traumatized kid learns to keep when an adult is falling apart. It is a powerful reminder that kids often understand emotional boundaries way better than adults do, patiently waiting for the right moment to offer comfort. What Mary does next is a brilliant move in de-escalation. She places the uneven blue paper crane on the floor, creating a sweet physical bridge between them. Holly recognizes it as a torn page from a new coloring book. Then, Mary bypasses every wall Holly has with a direct, gut-punch appeal. "Please do not go," she says. her voice steady and clear. "Daddy needs you, and I need you too." Holly completely loses the ability to speak. She reaches out, and the little girl seamlessly closes the gap, throwing her arms around her neck. Holly hugs her tight, grounding herself in the moment. The profound lesson here is that raw vulnerability totally disarms our deepest survival instincts. Sometimes, a simple plea from an innocent kid is the only anchor that stops us from running away. Just watch this incredible psychological reset happen in real time. Holly holds the kid, using that shared warmth to reboot her panicked nervous system. Wiping away her tears, she fully reactivates boss mode. She pulls out the Mafia extortion letter and straight up destroys the threat, ripping it into tiny pieces. Mary watches, getting the vibe of this protective ritual without needing a single word of explanation. Crushing the paper in her fist, Holly locks in her voice and says, "I am not going anywhere." That night, she sleeps in an armchair next to Mary's bed, officially evolving into a fierce protector. It hits hard. It proves a fundamental truth about us. Love does not magically cure fear, but it gives you the absolute conviction to stand your ground in the dark. While Holly levels up as a guardian, you and I need to pivot over to the security side of this drama. Tristan is running on pure paranoia, like any elite enforcer. The guy is brilliantly ruthless. He secretly hid a camera right above the staff mailboxes. He was not even spying on Holly. His actual target was Audrey. He caught Audrey acting sketchy earlier, asking for tea she never drinks. That nervous energy gave her away. 40 minutes before Holly grabs her mail, Tristan scrubs the overnight footage and hits the jackpot. He sees an unmarked truck by the gates and a guy in gloves slipping an envelope into the box. It teaches us a brutal but necessary lesson about trust in life. The most dangerous betrayals almost always start with the smallest, quietest changes in your normal routine. The drop happens in under 4 seconds. The courier tries to mask his plate with tape, but that is amateur hour against a mastermind like Tristan. The visible letters easily trace back to a shell company in Yonkers. This is classic mob behavior, leading directly to our main villain, Brandon Whitfield. Tristan actually snaps a photo of the letter right after Holly picks it up. You have to respect Tristan's insane impulse control. He does not kick her door down or panic. He lets Holly process the shock, taking the evidence straight to the dawn. Weston just stares at the threat without saying a single word. It really reminds us that true power is never about reacting blindly. Real strength is about gathering all the facts in absolute silence before you finally decide to make your move. Weston reads the threat twice, his face an absolute brick wall. Tristan does not need us to speak, having already checked the logs. Audrey was the only outsider in that control room, meaning she completely sold them out. Weston places the paper face down, and for a full 60 seconds, the room is suffocated by this terrifying silence. When he finally speaks, his voice is totally flat, carrying a bone-chilling detachment Tristan has not seen in years. He orders them to drag the courier in, demanding that Holly and the kid are kept at Emd in a total information blackout. It is a harsh truth about how apex predators operate in life. They never let their loved ones see the blood on their hands. They simply lock down the environment, shield the innocent, and prepare for a merciless hunt. Tristan executes the order flawlessly. By 10 at night, they snatch the courier from a sketchy motel. The guy completely folds with zero resistance, look like a pawn who knows he stepped into the wrong league. They drag him to an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the estate, totally off the grid with zero surveillance. Around midnight, Weston makes the long walkover in a heavy dark coat. Inside that echoing space, Tristan and his muscle wait in the pitch-black shadows. They have built the ultimate psychological theater. It proves a terrifying point about human fear. You do not always need to throw a physical punch to defeat an enemy. Sometimes, pure anticipation and total isolation are more than enough to completely shatter a person's mind before a single word is spoken. Stick with me here. We are about to witness some real mafia madness. A single bulb illuminates the concrete, isolating the courier. They leave him untied, a trick inducing absolute hopelessness. For 40 minutes, you only hear Weston's ice-cold voice, repeating 3 questions. Then dead silence, the horrific crack of wood hitting stone, and the questions repeat. By 1 in the morning, the courier staggers out. Physically fine, but his mind is mush. He spilled everything, including his handler's info. Weston strolls back to the house totally unfazed. It proves that the scariest people are never the loud, angry ones. The actual threats in life are the ones who can completely dismantle your entire world without ever raising their voice or wrinkling their suit. Weston does not even change clothes. He walks straight into the reading room, taking the same chair he shared with Holly. He dials Audrey, who answers, sounding completely terrified. Weston skips the pleasantries, coldly ordering her to drive to the estate immediately. Forcing someone out of their safe space in the dead of night is an absolute powerhouse move for psychological control. Audrey arrives just after 3 in the morning, having cried her eyes out during the misty drive, basically having a mental breakdown. She walks into the study and Weston just sits there. No drinks, no papers, just his phone on the desk. He deliberately does not offer her a seat. The lesson here is crystal clear. True dominance never needs to shout. It controls the entire room with cold, suffocating silence. Audrey stands paralyzed, her makeup totally ruined. She attempts a frantic defense, but Weston slices right through it. In a terrifying whisper, he gives her 3 hours to flee the state before her protection evaporates. Audrey collapses, sobbing she had no idea Brandon would go this far, crying that she still loves him. We have to understand how wild this is. It is textbook Stockholm Syndrome. She is blindly devoted to a narcissist boss, playing her like a fiddle, completely manipulating her reality. Weston has heard enough. He walks straight past her crumpled body on the floor, exiting the room in cold silence. It teaches us a brutal truth about toxic relationships. Sometimes, blind loyalty to the exact wrong person is nothing more than a tragic death sentence in disguise. Let's kick this off, guys. Picture this absolute madness. It is 4:10 in the morning, and Audrey is peeling out of the driveway with her headlights off, running like literal prey. Up on the 2nd floor, the boss, Weston, just watches her fade into the dark. The outside threat is gone, so he pivots to the drama inside. He walks to Holly's room and drops 2 sharp knocks. She opens up, looking totally wrecked, wearing yesterday's clothes and completely stressed. Weston doesn't blink. His eyes lock onto a fully packed canvas bag on her floor. He stares at the luggage, looks dead at her face, and says, "You were going to leave." No yelling, just cold, hard facts. It really goes to show you that sometimes the quietest reactions are the most terrifying ones in life. The guy sounds completely drained, dropping a rare moment of weakness. He mutters, "You should have come to me first." Holly is frozen in the doorway, gripping the wood so hard her knuckles are white. She literally cannot speak. What happens next is a full week of dead silence. In the Mafia world, they call this an acoustic shadow, meaning insane violence is brewing. Brandon drops off the map. Audrey is a ghost. Tristan's spy network picks up nothing, but Weston is not chilling out. He doubles the guards, brings in 4 massive hitmen from Boston, and stashes a backup crew 12 miles out. He builds a fortress of pure paranoia. It teaches us a brutal lesson. Sometimes silence does not mean peace. It just means a massive storm is about to hit your front door. Weston thought he blocked every weakness. Wrong. You and I are going to unpack this together. How does a mafia genius mess up? By trusting old loyalty over cold facts. On Saturday, a Boston guy who had been loyal for 10 years calls. He claims there is a massive problem at Charlestown Harbor, and Weston needs to be there tonight. Weston is suspicious and hesitates. Tristan tells him to go, promising to lock down the mansion. Around 7, Weston visits his little girl. She is drawing the sun, totally clueless about the mafia wars. He kisses her head, promising to return. Then he walks past Holly. The trap is set. The life lesson here is crystal clear. The hardest betrayal to ever see coming is always the one from a friend you have trusted the longest. In the hallway, Weston stops. He wants to talk to Holly, but keeps his feelings buried. He gives a quick nod and she does the same. He drives off. 3 hours down Highway 90. The Boston guy texts Tristan, saying the enemy vanished and the meeting is off. Tristan tells Weston. Weston is dead silent for 3 whole seconds. Boom. He realizes it is a massive setup. He whips his car around at the exit like an absolute madman. He calls Tristan, barking orders to get Holly and the kid into the bunker. Right now. Tristan sprints upstairs, pretending everything is fine while his heart is basically exploding. He quietly tells Holly to get the kid downstairs. The greatest lesson here is to always trust your gut feeling, the second a situation starts feeling a little too easy. Holly reads his stressed face for 2 seconds. Before grabbing the sleepy kid, they rush down into the basement, smelling of wet stone and cedar. They run up to this fake wooden door that hides a massive steel vault. Tristan punches his secret code into the keypad. A red air light flashes 3 times. He tries it again, 3 more flashes. He presses his thumb on the scanner. The machine gives a sad little beep and completely dies. Guys, someone on the inside sabotaged the bunker. At that exact same second, a massive rifle shot rings out from the front gate. Total chaos. The lesson here is wild but incredibly true. The giant walls we build to keep the bad guys out are usually the exact same walls that end up trapping us inside. The deadly siege has officially kicked off. Stick with me, because we are about to uncover what really went down. Tristan curses under his breath, trying to hide his panic. He pulls his gun and tells Holly the perimeter is broken, and she must hide the little girl right now. He tosses her an iron key for the horse stables and sprints upstairs straight into the gunfight. Holly is frozen in the basement, holding Mary. The kid is wide awake, eyes huge from the stress, but not crying. She whispers to ask where they are going. Holly forces her voice to sound sweet, telling her they are just playing hide and seek. It is a powerful life lesson. When true terror hits, we literally have to pretend it is just a simple game in order to keep our own minds from completely breaking apart. Holly keeps up this insane act, laying out the rules for their game. She tells Mary she must stay silent until a possessive comes back. The kid nods like a tiny soldier in a literal war zone. Holly picks her up and sneaks out onto the pitch-black path. The night is dark, filled with the pop of gunshots and screaming at the gate. Instead of freaking out, Holly goes full tactical. She waits by the door, counting to 5, to track where the shooters are. Then, she buries the kid's face in her shoulder and runs. She counts exactly 50 steps over the gravel. It teaches you something huge about survival. Focusing on a simple mechanical task, like counting, is the ultimate trick that stops your brain from completely shutting down during a massive disaster. Holly refuses to look back at the mansion, blocking out the nightmare. She slips into the stable and locks the door tight. Inside, it is dead quiet, except for the heavy breathing of the horses. Midnight, a massive horse in the back, pins its ears up, but Holly ignores it. She is running on pure survival adrenaline. She goes straight to the feed room, a fortress of heavy oat bags. She shoves 2 massive sacks apart, creating a hidden cave, just big enough for the kid. She tucks Mary inside the dark space. Grabbing the girl by the shoulders, Holly stares right into her eyes like a boss. The life lesson here is intense. Being brave does not mean you lack fear. It means you take total control of your next move, even when your whole world is completely burning down around you. Holly goes full psychological genius. She tells Mary to squeeze her teddy bear to stay grounded, ordering her to count to 100 on repeat. She drills one brutal rule into the kid's brain. Do not open this door for anyone, and stay quiet, no matter what noises you hear. Mary nods with chilling obedience. She sees the wild look in Holly's eyes and gets how deadly this is. Holly gives her a quick kiss on the forehead, then steps out. She bolts the latch from the outside, locking the poor kid in. Through the thick wood, you can hear the little girl whispering her numbers. 1, 2, 3. Holly backs up, ready to barricade the door. It is a brutal life truth. Sometimes you have to lock the most innocent people in the pitch-black dark just to guarantee they survive. To see the morning light. Just as Holly moves, the stable door is violently kicked open. A hitman walks in with a silenced gun. He wears a dark coat and a thick scarf over his face. He scans the room like a predator before locking eyes onto Holly. You and I are going to look at this together, because this is insane. Holly is standing in the open, just feet from where Mary is hiding. Instead of panicking, Holly refuses to glance at the hiding spot. She stares the killer down and slowly backs away toward the other side of the barn, right where that massive angry horse is standing. The hitman does not say a single word. The life lesson here is chilling. In a true life or death confrontation, an enemy screaming is scary, but absolute calculated silence is always the most terrifying weapon of all. The hitman raises his gun, walking forward with a slow predator rhythm. Holly matches his speed, walking backward while staring a hole straight through him. She fights every urge to turn and run, because if she bolts, he might look around and find the girl. She is acting as literal human bait. She backs up until her spine hits the wood of Midnight's stall. She can feel the massive horse breathing hot air right on her neck. The beast is crowding the door, super angry, radiating pure heat and aggression. The killer stops exactly 4 steps away. It brings up a really raw life lesson. We walk around acting civilized, but underneath it all, we are just animals. Sometimes your best chance at staying alive is simply trusting the raw, aggressive instincts of the natural world when your back is against the wall. Look at this insane setup. The hitman raises his gun, locking in for the kill. Holly is totally cooked, her time is up. But she has one wild card he does not see coming. She leans back and whispers a desperate plea to the massive beast behind her, begging for help. She rips back the heavy iron latch, shoves the door open, and lets herself against the wood. Suddenly, 1,200 pounds of pure muscle explodes out of the stall. The horse ignores her completely and launches straight at the assassin. The guy is so terrified he only gets off one pathetic shot. Listen closely, guys. When you are totally trapped, weaponizing your environment is a massive boss move. It teaches us a real lesson. You have to use whatever you have on hand, because in your darkest moments, resourcefulness is the only thing that saves you. The bullet slams into the wood inches from her head. The hitman never gets to pull the trigger twice. The sound of the horse trampling the guy hits like a massive wooden roof caving in. The intruder folds instantly, his weapon sliding across the dirt. Midnight stands over the wrecked threat like a boss, stomping the ground. Then, the beast actually forces himself to calm down. He is breathing heavy, pumped on pure adrenaline, but the violence just stops. He turns and locks eyes with Holly in total silence. It hits her right then. This animal literally knew exactly who the real enemy was. It teaches us something massive about life. True loyalty is a deep, primal bond you earn through genuine respect. If you show real trust to others, they will step up and protect you when the chips are down. That is how real families are built. Holly collapses against the wall, drained as the adrenaline crash hits her. Her legs turn to absolute jelly. Boots crunching on the gravel spike her panic all over again. The door gets ripped open, and it is Tristan. He looks like he just survived a war zone. Shirt torn and blood wiped across his face. He scans the absolute chaos in a split second, taking in the clapped hitman, the massive horse, and Holly totally rattled. He lowers his gun, dropping his voice to sound super calm, and asks if she is all right. She nods once, her protector instincts kicking right back in. She tells him Mary is locked away, totally hidden from this nightmare. It reminds us of a powerful truth. A real protector will always put a pulled child's mental peace way ahead of their own physical pain. Sometimes being truly strong just means holding it completely together for someone who needs you. Tristan instantly flips the switch into Mafia Enforcer mode. Zero panic, just brutal efficiency. He makes 2 quick calls. In minutes, a cleanup crew rolls in and drags the attacker out on a tarp like taking out the trash. Then, Tristan completely changes his vibe. He squats by the feed room door, opening it just a crack, so he sounds warm and fatherly. He asks the little girl if she is still counting. She calls out her numbers, proving she is completely shielded from the horror show outside. Tristan praises her, telling her to keep counting so they can finish scrubbing the crime scene. It teaches a really tough life lesson. Sometimes, handling a massive crisis means keeping a dark secret from the people you love just to protect their peace. Shielding an innocent mind is always worth hiding the absolute worst, ugliest parts of reality. Stick with me, because this is where the story absolutely breaks the internet. The big boss, Weston, appears in the doorway looking like a total mess. Usually perfectly dressed, his coat is open and his clothes are dirty. In one hyper-focused look, he scans the wrecked room. He takes in the huge horse, the bullet holes, and Holly shaking against the wall. He completely ignores his top mafia guys and walks straight up to her. For the very first time ever, he reaches out and holds her. This is not some basic boss checking on a worker. This is a massive emotional anchor. It shows you exactly how real life works. When a truly terrifying crisis hits, all those fake social rules and job titles just completely vanish. Extreme stress burns away the tough act, leaving only the raw, real human connection that was hiding underneath the whole time. The big boss pulls her against his chest, creating a crazy mix of total dominance and ultimate safety. One hand grips her shoulder, the other holds the back of her head, forcing her to accept his protection. You can actually see him shaking slightly, a detail only she notices. This right here is exactly how insane trauma bonds are formed. Holly does not push back at all. She completely gives in, resting her exhausted head on his chest. She just whispers that the kid is totally safe. Fast forward to morning, and his criminal empire looks completely normal again. Every single bullet hole is magically gone. It teaches a really dark but important lesson about the world. The illusion of a perfectly safe life is often the most dangerous trap. Controlling, powerful people will build a fake, quiet paradise just to keep you completely locked inside their cage. Let us look at this together to see what it means when a crime scene just vanishes. The bullet holes in the wood? Totally filled in with matching resin. The blood was blasted away with power washers before the sun came up. The dead hitman was dragged off through hidden mafia routes by a specialized cleanup crew. Erasing a human life like it never existed is exactly how these underworld bosses keep their grip on the city. They make sure their violence never leaves a single physical trace. It is pure psychological warfare. This gives us a massive lesson on how real influence works in the shadows. True power is not just about surviving a crazy, lethal ambush. Ultimate power is having the cash, connections, and loyal crew to flawlessly convince the entire outside world that the bloody attack never even happened in the first place. Let us open the case file on this wild morning after. By 7, the little girl, Mary, is basically pretending everything is perfectly normal. Tristan sneaked her back into her bed hours ago. Now she is just sitting there eating pancakes, talking about a dream she had with a black horse. Her mafia boss dad, Weston, walks in and kisses her head. But catch this in detail. The kid completely ignores the fresh, bloody cut on her dad's hand. She does not ask us a single question. In these dark criminal families, kids literally train themselves to be totally blind to the violence. It is a hardcore survival reflex. Meanwhile, Holly completely skipped breakfast and hid out in the stables. The lesson here is pretty dark but true. Humans, especially innocent kids, will mentally block out the absolute worst realities just so they can survive another day in peace. Holly is sitting by the stall with a small bandage on her forehead, the only physical proof of last night's absolute chaos. That massive black horse is standing super close, resting its heavy neck on the wood. They are literally calming each other's fried nervous systems down in total silence. Then, the big boss Weston walks in. He scrubbed off the blood and threw on a basic gray shirt. Notice how carefully he moves. He brings coffee and sits down, keeping just enough distance so she does not panic, but close enough to show he is there. Then, out of nowhere, the guy completely drops his massive emotional walls. He looks at her and finally says that his wife's name was Clara. The lesson here is pretty profound. Sometimes, Surviving intense, shared trauma is the absolute only thing powerful enough to unlock a perfectly guarded, frozen heart. You and I have to process how insane it is for a ruthless boss to open up like this. His voice totally drops that cold, calculated vibe he usually wears. He lays out the whole tragic timeline. He got married at 27 to Clara, an architect, and then they had Mary. He stares blankly into his coffee cup, brutally breaking down his own past. He talks about that single, fatal mistake of sending her to a warehouse in Queens instead of going himself. Then comes the absolute gut punch. He confesses he knew his car was being tracked by rival gangs. He makes absolutely zero excuses. He is literally blaming himself for his wife's murder. It teaches us a massive reality check about life. You can have all the money, muscle, and power in the entire world, but you can never, ever buy your way out of crushing guilt. You have to live with your choices. He admits that just 40 minutes of being sloppy was all it took to ruin his life. Holly just stares at the horse to stay totally grounded. Then Weston drops his biggest secret. For 3 whole years, he pushed absolutely everyone away. If he never let anyone get close, his enemies could never take them. He stayed completely locked in that dark mental prison until Holly showed up at his compound. He pauses, letting his coffee go totally cold. Then he drops the ultimate plot twist. He is secretly destroying his own massive criminal empire. He is washing all the dirty money into clean businesses for his daughter over the next 5 years, leaving Tristan to handle the bloody cleanup. He is not saying this to manipulate her. This is his absolute truth. The lesson here is massive. True regret and a deep need to protect the innocent can force even the darkest villain to completely rewrite their entire life. Guys, this is the exact second the entire power dynamic flips on its head. Weston drops the ultimate question. Is Holly going to stick around and watch him go straight? We are way past that Stockholm Syndrome garbage where the hostage falls for the mob boss. She sets her coffee down and straight up grabs his hand. Her hand is shaking like crazy from adrenaline, but she does not even try to hide it. She is laying all her cards on the table and gives him one solid nod. This is not a trauma bond, bro. This is a boss-level choice. Weston stares at her hand for a second, then flips his own over and locks his fingers with hers. No force, no mafia intimidation. Just 2 survivors grounding each other in the absolute madness of this criminal underworld. Jump forward 6 months, and the entire underworld around this estate gets flipped upside down. Remember the main antagonist, Brandon Whitfield? That absolute megalomaniac gets busted by federal agents inside an Atlantic City hotel room. But here is the massive plot twist, guys. He was not taken out by a hitman in an alley. He was destroyed by a mountain of paperwork. An independent attorney in Washington handed the feds 400 pages of financial crimes and wiretaps. And, guess what? The family name was nowhere to be found on those documents. Weston literally executed his biggest rival using the legal system. He pulled off a total manipulation, trading his usual bloody street violence for a clean, untraceable corporate takedown. Absolute madman behavior. Look closely at how they completely split their own empire. The syndicate started the exact shutdown Weston promised her that morning in the dirt. His right-hand man, Tristan, took over the illegal operations, but ran them with a strict mandate to pull the plug. It was a perfectly controlled demolition of a massive mafia empire. 0 expansion. 0 new territory. They held the front lines steady, carefully dismantling the violence, so no one else ended up as collateral damage. Meanwhile, Weston shifted his entire brainpower to going legit, dropping heavy cash into agricultural tech and healthcare. This dude was literally rewriting his own code to leave the mob life behind. And Holly? Man, she evolved way past just being some hired nanny. She was calling her own shots now. By early spring, Holly steps up and launches this awesome equine therapy program for displaced city kids. Weston funded the entire thing from the shadows, making sure his mafia reputation stayed a million miles away from it. She named it the Bennett Horse Program to honor her late father and reclaim her family name. That massive black horse, Midnight, became the main attraction for these kids. just standing in its stall like a giant protector. For little Mary, that horse was her absolute best friend. Every single afternoon, she would stand at the fence with a carrot, spilling all her secrets to this giant beast. Then came this super warm afternoon, in April. Mary bursts out of the front doors, sprinting across the lawn, waving a folded piece of paper, like her life depended on it. Let's break down this absolutely massive emotional payoff. Weston and Holly were just chilling in the yard when Mary came running up like a bullet. She shoves the paper right at her dad, then quickly holds it out so both adults can see. Guys, it was a crayon drawing of 4 figures: a blonde guy, a brunette woman, a little girl, and a huge black horse. Right at the top, written in that messy 6-year-old handwriting, it said, "My family." Boom! The kid just officially declared them a real family before the adults even had the guts to admit it to each other. Weston just stared at that paper until the heavy reality of it actually hit him. He folded it up so carefully and tucked it right into his shirt pocket over his heart. Then he looked straight up at Holly. The little girl sprints off, completely clueless that she just dropped a tactical nuke on their emotional baggage. Weston drops his voice low and asks her, "Will you stay?" "You and I have to catch the insane difference here. 6 months ago, this mob boss was begging for time to fix his mess. Now he is asking for forever." Holly does not just say yes blindly. She looks around at the kid, the horse, the whole life they built. Finally, she looks him in the eye and drops the hardest line of the series. "I did not come here to fit in. I came here to belong." Boom! That right there is how you destroy a victim mindset. She totally claimed her throne. Weston holds out his hand, and she takes it. The air was thick with dirt, but the mafia bloodshed was officially over. It was just the dust of an ordinary day. Think about how insane this is. A former mafia kingpin, a survivor, a little girl, and a warhorse completely rewired their brains to live in peace. If there is one simple life lesson you take away from this crazy story, it is that we are not defined by our worst mistakes or the heavy armor we wear to survive. True healing happens when someone sees your darkest history and still consciously chooses to stick around. Some wounds do not heal just because time passes. They heal because someone else finally sits down and listens instead of trying to control you. Real loyalty is not built on blood oaths or gang rules. It is built on the small stuff: a quiet afternoon, a crayon drawing, and 2 hands holding each other in the sun. And that wraps up one of the wildest mob revenge stories we have ever covered on this channel. If watching this ruthless boss completely dismantle his own empire blew your mind, smash that like button right now so the algorithm pushes this recap to everyone else. Share this video with a friend who loves a good plot twist, and make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss another crazy breakdown. Now I have to ask you guys, what is your take on this whole situation? What do you think about Holly going from a terrified captive to the absolute boss of the estate? Grabbed his shirt, Did you recognize any of your own survival instincts in these characters? Maybe you relate to Holly, feeling like you have to carry the heavy burden of your entire world strictly on your own shoulders. Or maybe you see yourself in Weston and his cold, calculating detachment. I know we have all seen that kind of avoidant vibe before. That stubborn belief that the only way to stop getting hurt is to lock yourself in a fortress and never let anyone pass the gates. We build these huge emotional walls and trick ourselves into thinking they keep us safe, grab these deceit, when they are really just solitary confinement. Or maybe you know now someone whose quiet distance you always mistook for anger, when really they were just trying to survive the day. Drop your thoughts in the comments down below. Take a hard look at the walls you are still defending in your own life, and figure out if it is finally time to tear them down. Keep your eyes wide open, guys, and I will catch you in the next recap.
Holly S.'s relationship with horses carries one of the story S' strongest emotional lessons. As a child, she learned from her father how to understand horses through breath, movement, silence, and instinct. By the time she was a teenager, she had become known as the Whisperer, someone with rare talent and a future in the horse world. But after her father dies in a stable accident, Holly does not only lose a parent, she loses trust in herself. She believes the horse had been given a warning that she failed to read, and that guilt becomes so heavy that she swears never to touch another horse again. This teaches an important educational lesson about trauma. Pain can make people abandon the very gifts that once gave their lives meaning. Sometimes people stop singing, writing, teaching, painting, loving, or trying because one painful event convinces them they are no longer worthy or capable. Holly's self-blame is understandable, but it is also unfair. She was 19, facing an accident that even experts could not explain. Yet guilt often does not obey logic. It attaches itself to the survivor and whispers, "You should have done more." The story reminds viewers that healing requires questioning that voice. Holly's return to horses begins not because she forgets the past, but because Midnight needs her and Mary needs her. Her gift returns through responsibility, not ego. Educationally, this is powerful. A person's trauma may interrupt their calling, but it does not have to end it forever. With time, courage, and a safe reason to begin again, people can return to the parts of themselves they thought were lost. Holly's journey teaches that healing is not erasing pain. It is learning to live beyond the moment that broke you.